Hello there, I'm Chicken Farmer. Welcome to my channel. This video will be kind of my final thoughts on the mobile infantry event, and I kind of want to cover a few things that were good and not so good about the event. Now that I have achieved the rewards that I originally set out to get in this game mode, I am no longer going to be playing this game mode. I'm done. I don't plan on playing it again unless it comes out again. Maybe in a year or maybe later down the line, which I would love to see this game mode come back with just a few minor changes here and there. But I will say this game mode did definitely get very, very boring after a while and more monotonous than anything. Having to deal with this grind over the last 12 to 13 days has definitely gotten tiresome, especially in the latter half. Before I get into it, I do just want to say I am not completely abandoning all of the quote-unquote tank review-esque videos. They will come back eventually. I'm playing around with different types of videos, and just letting y'all know, you will see many of those videos in the future. It's just right now I have a few that I want to make that are not that type of video, but they will be back soon. Alright, so getting into the good things from this event, and the things that I liked about it. I really liked the combination of quote-unquote infantry with tanks and helicopters. I think that's really cool. At points, it actually reminded me a little bit of Squad, just kind of working together with some infantry to take out an enemy tank or hold a position. Like, I really like that. That was cool. And then having helicopters and whatnot to kind of mix it up a little bit and keep you from camping, which that was very nice. I will say I did manage to die to pretty much every single hellfire that was fired at the map. I felt like every time there was an Apache in the sky and they had hellfires, at least one of them, if not two, would kill me. So, yeah, that was just a little bit of annoyance, but that just comes down to the players that were in those matches. But overall, I do really like the idea of mixing infantry with the tanks and whatnot. It felt cool, and I liked how the infantry could knock out tanks, and really just any class could knock out any tank, even down to like the AA. Funny enough, the AA was actually one of my favorite classes to play. I would actually use the anti-air missiles against ground vehicles and infantry. For some reason, it managed to work really well, and the fact that it could lock on to tanks as well allowed me to knock out IFVs in one shot, to knock out MBTs after a few shots, or incapacitate them. And even with the AA, the 8mm machine gun that it has, it could actually pen the rear of MBT, so you could actually continuously catch the MBT on fire until they ran out of fire extinguishers. I did that a couple times, and I definitely pissed some MBT players off, but it was just kind of cool that I could knock them out with an 8mm machine gun. That was just kind of funny. But it is nice that every single class could knock out tanks, could knock out helicopters. I guess you could argue against, like, many of the classes would have trouble with knocking out helicopters, so it kind of comes down to either an IFV, MBT, or an AA player to knock out helicopters, but you could only really argue that about the helicopters that would sit with ATGMs all the way at the spawn. But most of the helicopters I ever saw were kind of rushing in and using rocket pods, which is what I did whenever I spawned in a helicopter. But yeah, I just overall think it was cool that any of the infantry classes could deal with tanks or IFVs. And I will say each and every one of them was fun in their own ways. Also, the maps that were chosen for this game mode were pretty solid, I would say. I wouldn't say any of them was far worse than the others. Like, I couldn't imagine many other maps would have been any better than what they chose and what they went with. There were a few spots on some of the maps that were a little annoying because they were obviously not designed for robots to be sitting on the roof. So there would be like some guardrails that wouldn't be properly modeled in and would just eat all kinds of ammunition, which was a little bit of an annoyance, but that's me nitpicking the map for something that it wasn't even designed to do. Like, it was not designed for robots to be jumping all over the place. So I'm not going to say that that's a legitimate argument. Also, a couple days into the event, they did actually drop a patch which fixed the problem when you tried to move while aiming down sights as an infantry player. Like, your camera would turn with the direction you were moving. But luckily they fixed it a couple days in. Again, have to commend Gaijin for fixing the problems very quickly. They seem to be pretty good at doing that. They also extended the range of the anti-air missiles, so even if the helicopters were sitting all the way at their spawn, you could still reach them. That was something that was a very nice change. There were a couple other changes, but those were the two things that kind of stuck out to me in that patch. Another thing that was great about this event is you could actually play out a whole match and even play pretty stupid and not really have a fear of running out of respawns. Since you could respawn as every single class twice, and it wouldn't cost any spawn points at all, so even if you were playing terribly and not getting any kills, you could still end up spawning in a tank or an IFE without even getting any kills. That was just kind of nice. And you just didn't have all the people, the one-hit wonders, where they just go in, die, and then leave matches. That's something that's been plaguing the regular game modes for a while, and that's one of the biggest downsides to the main game mode, is people just leaving after dying once or twice. But in this game mode, people seem to stick around. No one seemed to really leave that much. And the matches actually lasted a little while, and there was always action. There was always something going on. Every once in a while, you'd have a team that would just absolutely stomp the other. Another good thing in this game mode was I felt like the teams were decently balanced, as in Russian to American. Now, I know that Russian top tier absolutely stomps 9 times out of 10, and it's near impossible to win a top tier American match. There's reasons behind that happening. I'm not going to get into those in this video, but I felt like the two teams were pretty well balanced. Like, the T-80 was really, really tanky, but kind of sucked knocking out infantry, whereas the Abrams was pretty weak when it came to survivability, but it was really, really good at knocking out infantry. And also, I would arguably say that when it came to ammunition, the Abrams was better in this event, mainly due to the proxy fuse heat shells. So not only could you use it against infantry and it was your best anti-infantry shell, it was also something that could be used as anti-air. I shot many helicopters down with this heat ammunition, and it's just very, very solid. Whereas with the T-80, its HE shell was pretty solid, but it didn't have the proxy fuse that the Abrams heat shells did. So you weren't able to really use them effectively against helicopters. Now, you could obviously argue that that's a skill issue, but I feel like the consistency of the American heat shells in comparison to the Russian HE shells is just better when it came to anti-air. But I feel like they were on pretty even grounds when it came to anti-infantry. Most of the time, I really wouldn't use my main gun against infantry that often. Mostly, I would try to use machine guns and then use my main cannon as a last resort, which I found to be the most effective way to kind of engage infantry in an MBT, but I feel like the MBTs were pretty well balanced. When it comes to IFEs, that's where things begin to get very, very unbalanced. I feel like the BMP was very, very underpowered, and the Bradley was very overpowered. Again, kind of due to the ammunition. Not only was the Bradley seemingly more accurate, it also had darts, so it was able to not only easily deal with MBTs, especially from the side, but it also had higher velocity, so that if you were engaging infantry from a range, you would be able to have an easier time dealing with them. Whereas the BMP, since it only has APDS, which were very, very slow in comparison to the Bradley's darts. Yes, you could use APDS against the Abrams, just because sometimes the Abrams has some really weak spots. Even from the front, you could kill the Abrams with a BMP, but overall, I feel like the Bradley was just the best vehicle in the entire game mode. Not only did you have the ATGMs to deal with the other MBTs and IFEs, but you could also use them against the helicopters. Since the Bradley has radar lock, you were able to lock onto the helicopter and then fire an ATGM. And if the helicopter pilot wasn't paying enough attention, would get knocked out with one ATGM. Now, you could obviously argue that, oh, that's a waste of an ATGM. Well, you get plenty of ATGMs in the Bradley, so I didn't mind wasting any of them on helicopters. I didn't really see that as waste. Also, when it came to ground vehicles for America, they both had commander's thermals, whereas the Russians did not, which that obviously didn't change between the main game mode and the special event, but that is just something to note that is kind of nice about the American tanks in this game mode particularly. Another good thing for this mode is you could farm mission score really, really easily. And that's kind of a thing that I'm going to complain about a little bit, is I wish that the crafting event started at the same time as the mechanized infantry event. I think that that would have been a better play. It would make us as the players, it would just make our lives easier, just having both start at the same time so that you could get as much grinding done in the crafting event as you possibly could, because you had access to the mechanized infantry event, which gave you a lot of mission score. You were able to absolutely farm mission score in mechanized infantry, And if they had started the crafting event at the beginning of the mechanized infantry event, then you could have been grinding out your mission score a lot. It is kind of a nitpick, and I know that Gaijin don't tend to do that, start the two events at the same time, but it would have just been nice to see, and it just would have been better for everybody involved. And that actually ends up taking me into the bad things about the event. I'm going to start off with spawn camping. So you'd have a few matches where a team would absolutely stomp another, and then it would just turn into a spawn camp fest. There was no spawn immunity at all for the exoskeletons or the mechs or whatever you want to call them. There was none. So people could just sit there, watch the spawn, wait for you to spawn, and the second you spawned, you would die. And it wasn't that often that a team would stomp that hard to where you just had to leave because you were just unable to spawn. But something I did find would happen a lot of the time is you'd have one or two people that would either clear out a flank or just flank really hard so they didn't run into any enemies, and they would run around and then camp your spawn. That would happen pretty often, and even more often it would happen where you push to a point, you capture it, and then the teammates would just run straight to the spawn point from the point that they just captured, instead of going and capturing one of the other 2 points that might be in enemy hands or just be neutral. They just walk straight into the enemy spawn and just started spawn camping them. That got especially bad when people would start spawning in tanks and then sitting in the infantry spawn with a tank. The only way you could counter that is when you had a massive group of your team spawn all at once so that they could work together to knock out the tank, which always felt great to kill the spawn campers, but it just sucks that it has to happen in the first place, which part of that does come down to the players, but I do believe that there needs to be some sort of spawn immunity even for the infantry. Now, another bad thing about this game mode is the hitboxes. The hitboxes were the main downside to this event. They were the main reason that I began to not enjoy the event even a couple days in. I feel like the game mode would have had more longevity if the hitboxes had been more consistent when it came to the infantry. I even have a clip where I black out someone's head and they did not die. So it's not only the hitboxes, but they just decided not to die. Whatever is going on with the damage models and damage of the mech suits or the infantry or whatever, just they were horrendous. Like, I'm very disappointed in the way that the damage is done to those things. I want to say it's just because it was maybe rushed, but I really don't know what that side of the game looks like. I don't know what that side of the development looks like. I don't know if it was impossible for them to have consistent hitboxes and consistent damage. I don't know that side of things. I'm not intelligent on how games are developed and whatnot. So I'm just going off of just what I saw, and what I saw was not good. The hitboxes and whatnot just kind of ruined the event, kind of ruined the game mode. So that is my biggest issue with this entire event. Also, a side note, I know this has nothing to do with the actual event itself, but the T-80s eating shots to the ammunition, where you would black out multiple pieces of ammunition in a T-80 and it would not detonate. It's an issue I've only had with Russian vehicles. I maybe have seen it once or twice with German vehicles in the regular game modes, but I know this doesn't have to do with the event that much, but it is annoying that the T-80s can just get their ammunition knocked out and it absolutely do nothing. It just doesn't make any sense, especially seeing how T-80s and T-70s do in actual combat. It kind of makes me question some things, but I'm not going to get into the whole Russian bias argument. So I'm gonna leave that there, but I know it had nothing to do with the event. It's just a frustration that I had even during the event. And the final thing that I'll cover, the final bad thing, is there was no real incentive to playing the game mode. Yes, you could grind out the cosmetics, but you had no incentive other than that. If you didn't care about the cosmetics, there's literally no reason for you to play the event at all. You don't get any silver, you don't get anything. You don't get any incentive to playing the event at all. And that's something I wish they would have done, is just given you a little bit of silver for just playing the event. Maybe 5,000 silver lions for losing, 10,000 for winning. Like, I don't think that would break the economy by any means. Maybe not 10,000, maybe you could just 8,000. Like, I don't know, I'm just throwing numbers out there, but I would have liked to have seen a little bit of incentive to playing the event other than the cosmetics. And you also have to think about the people that have jobs, they work 9 to 5s, they don't have all this time to spend grinding out these cosmetics. Even if they did want them, yes, they could pay for them. Maybe they're free to players, I don't know. But if you had given them some silver for just playing the event, maybe they would have hopped on for a few matches, and maybe they would have spent their hour or two they spend each evening or every other evening or whatever they do, and at least gotten something out of it. It was a complete waste of time for those types of people, and that's a little bit of frustration because I think that everybody should be included. Everybody should be rewarded, everybody should be included. Whether Gaijin want to lock things behind grinds or paywalls, that's up to them, but I think that everybody should be included, and that's why I think that you should have gotten some form of silver or something, some sort of incentive to playing the game mode, even for just a couple matches. But yeah, I think that's it for this video. Before you guys leave, please like and subscribe. If you enjoyed, it would help me out a ton. But yes, I just wanted to make this video to kind of get my thoughts that I had on the event, especially after I'd played it so much. I've kind of formulated my own thoughts, and just for those of you that didn't have time to grind the event or whatever, no, you aren't really missing out on much. I think I came up with an okay list of good things and bad things, especially after how much I grinded this event. Oh my gosh, I was so happy to finish this. I didn't get all of the rewards, but I didn't want all the rewards from the get-go. I just wanted to get up to the quadcopter drone. That's all I wanted, and that's what I got, so I'm done. I'm not doing the crafting event to try and get 3 acceptance certificates. I'm just sticking to 1 and then selling the rest of my stuff to get something out of it rather than just try and sell my soul. I don't have the time to deal with that. Also, another thing for those of y'all that are still sticking around now, I kind of want to wait to the end to mention this. I'm going to try and be a little bit more laid back and loose. I'm not going to be as robotic going forward, hopefully. I realized how robotic I've been up to this point, and I'm a much different person when the red light is off, and I kind of want to be a little bit more natural even when the red light is on. So I'm going to try and be a little bit more laid back and chill rather than uptight and robotic. I may not be good at it for a little while, but I'm going to keep trying and just keep trying to be a better entertainer. That's one of my goals here. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for sticking around and listening to me ramble. It's crazy that there are some of you guys that actually just sit there and just watch all my content. It blows my mind. I put a ton of hard work and effort into this daily. It's definitely a struggle, I'll tell you that much. This whole YouTube thing is painful. It is very, very rough mentally. Most of my battles are mental, so just makes this a little bit harder than it should be. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and yeah, have a chill day.